Hello, dear folks. Welcome to season 5 of our On the Call series produced by the Stars Among Us. I'm Ozzy, as you know, and I'm very, very happy that you tuned into this thank you tour of mine, as each episode is a thank you card to those who have impacted my life. And on this 10th episode of season 5, I'm shining light on Mr. DavidCady. Hello, David.
Hello. It's an honor to be thanked by you. You are one of my favorite people that I've come across in this business, really and truly.
Oh, thank you so much. And people, I just paid him about $50, kind of cheap to get that.
Yeah, I'm easy that way. Yeah. No, I mean every word of it.
Oh, thank you. Just so my audience knows a little bit about you. After receiving your BFA at NYU, during that time actually, right? You were cast in the original Broadway production of Stephen Sondheim's Merrily We Roll Along?
Yes, that happened in my junior year. And I left school to do a Broadway show, not bad, working with Stephen Sondheim.
Not at all.
Unfortunately, we closed very soon after opening. I went back to NYU. I went back to finish my degree.
A lot of people would not normally do that.
It was important to me, and in hindsight, I'm teaching on the university level, and I would not have been able to do that had I not gone back to school and gotten my degree. I always say to young people, you don't know where your life is going to take you, and you don't know when that degree is going to come in handy. And I very happily went back to school. I liked it very much.
You also appeared as Peter Van Daan in the Off-Broadway chamber musical, Yours Anne.
Yes, I worked as an actor for, about 5 or 6 years after school before transitioning into casting. And Yours Anne was a very special project. As a young performer, I was primarily a singer, and this was a chamber opera based on the Diary of Anne Frank, and it was really the one job that I didn't have to audition for. It's always nice to be handed a role. I did sing for the composer and the lyricist, but I was recommended for the job, and I met with them and sang for them and got the job. So that was lovely. It means a lot to me, that project.
Yeah, and what was it like being on tour as Motel the Tailor?
I was actually a replacement in that tour. There had been another actor playing Motel opposite the great Herschel Bernardi, who was one of the premier teviers of his time, and he did the role for many, many years. They were looking for a replacement. I went in, and the idea of doing Fiddler on the Roof, I thought, it's sort of a corny show. I'm not really sure I want to do this. And it actually turned out to be a very meaningful job for me. That show is all about this little town in Russia. The first day of rehearsal, I remember one of the ensemble members walking up to me and saying, "Hi, I'm your mom." Muddle's mother is really not a character, but the way that the show had been directed, and this was something that had come from Jerome Robbins, who had directed the original production, everyone on that stage had a place in this village and a relationship to everyone else. And so being on that stage was really like being in this little village, in this family. And it was really one of my favorite experiences that I ever had as an actor, and met some wonderful people. You always meet wonderful people. Yes. You become a family, and very happily I still know some of those people today.
As a singer, what were you, baritone?
I guess what they would call today a baritenor. I was a baritone with high notes. I think had I continued to perform and had I continued to work on my voice, I think I probably would have made it much more into the tenor range. By the time I was done in my voice lessons, I was hitting a high C, but that was on the rare occasion. But I think had I stayed with it, I would have taken on more tenor roles. But the timbre of my voice is more baritonal than anything else.
What got you to intern at Playwrights Horizons?
When Merrily closed, I should say, I went back to school. The fall of my I guess what would have been my senior year was taken up with rehearsals and the show opening. We opened in November, we closed 2 weeks later. In January, I went back for the second half of my senior year, and then extended my education into the summer. So I did it all January through August. An internship came up at Playwrights at a time when Playwrights Horizons was just becoming Playwrights Horizons. They had 2 hit shows off-Broadway. They certainly were not the institution that they are now, but they were just starting to get recognition. I remember the very first night that I interned at Playwrights, they had me ushering at a couple of the shows, including a midnight concert by Mary Testa, who is a very successful, renowned musical theater performer still to this day. And one of the other women who worked at Playwrights, she and I ended up sleeping on a pull-out couch in the offices. It was the lobby, really, of Playwrights Horizons. I mean, that's how small of an operation it was. And then that's when I first started getting interested in casting, because as a theater student, they had me reading in auditions with actors. It was a fascinating process to see people come in and read the same role in different ways, and it just sparked my curiosity and my interest. And then a few years later, when I decided that I no longer had to be an actor, and that's always a good sign when you know that it's time to walk away. And I really didn't feel as if I were forced to do it.
Right.
I happily walked away. It was my decision. I thought, what else could I do in this business? And casting became, I pursued casting. It was something that I thought I could be good at, and it still seemed very creative, a very, very creative process. And the first job that I got as a casting assistant was on the original Dirty Dancing. So, so that was
that kind of sealed it for you.
By the way, no one who worked on that film had any indication that it would become the phenomenon that it became. It was just a little dance movie, and but
you got that. You did that with Bonnie Timmerman.
Bonnie Timmerman, yes.
But before that, you were at Grey Advertising.
No, actually, that was afterwards. My first casting jobs were with Bonnie. She was a very, very, very successful casting director at the time.
Because through her, you also did like Roman Polanski's Frantic. It was starring.
Yes. She was hot at that time, and so we cast for Roman Polanski, Hector Babenco. We did Ironweed. She was also doing Miami Vice at the time.
And you did Enchanted with starring Meryl Streep.
That was afterwards. That was later. But I worked for Bonnie. She was very tough. My training was impeccable, but she was very, very tough. Tough is okay, but she was very, very difficult. Let's say this, extremely good at what she did.
Right.
But I lasted about 9 months with her, and then did some freelance work as an assistant. And then I was out of work. Michael Cohen, who had written Yours Anne, the musical, and Enid Futterman, the two of them worked at Grey Advertising. That's where they had met. Enid or Michael, one of them, recommended me for a job in the casting department at Grey, and then I went to Grey, and that's when I started being an assistant on commercials. I just needed a job. It wasn't my intention to become a commercial casting director, but I needed work, and that's where the universe sent me.
Where did the Petrified Prince for Public Theater and Andrew Lloyd Webber's Whistle Down the Wind come?
So they happened, so I was with Gray Advertising for about 3 years. I was looking for someone, and I interviewed for that job and went to work for Donna and was with her for 25 years. In addition to the commercials that we worked on, I actually picked up the phone one day and called Hal Prince, who was always very, very good to me and always very good to all of us who worked on Merrily. He felt very guilty about Merrily. We were all very, very young in that show. We were between 16 and 22, 23. And he felt that so much had been promised to us that he and Steve Sondheim weren't really able to deliver. And so he was always very good to us. And one day I picked up the phone and called him and said, "By the way, just so you know, I'm casting now." And he immediately asked Donna and myself to cast The Petrified Prince, which he was working on at the Public Theater. And then that led to the Lloyd Webber show, Whistle Down the Wind. So
nice.
Yeah. And then Enchanted was one of the films that came to Donna's office that she and I worked on. So between Dirty Dancing and Enchanted, the young students that I have now, those are the two projects that they're the most enamored of. They've never heard of Merrily We Roll Along, but of course they've heard of Dirty Dancing and Enchanted.
Right. In a sense, it kind of paid off, having been involved with them before, and then in casting, you're able to tap in and kind of move forward that relationship.
Yes, absolutely, without question. When you get to be my age, you see how linear everything is when you look back. You don't always...
That's why they say you never burn your bridges, right?
Oh, no. Absolutely. Be nice to everybody. You know, the saying is, be nice to the people on the way up the ladder because you never know who you're going to meet on the way down.
Exactly.
I don't feel as if I've had to descend the ladder, but I think it's tremendously important to be nice to everybody, and I teach young people now, and I stress that all the time.
But that's how I know you as well, being that kind of person. But before we go on to that, with Donna, it is said that you cast about 2,000 television commercials.
Kind of made up that figure, but it has to be at least that much because I was with Donna at a time when it was, we were extremely busy. I at least worked on 2 commercials a week.
Right.
And
so the math in itself tells
you. I was with her for 25 years, so it's just it's a tremendous amount of commercials. Yeah, I mean it's probably more than 2,000, but I figured if I put anything bigger on my resume, that would seem, I don't know.
Time to write books, David.
I've taught commercials for so many years, and I've thought about putting it all down on paper. I might do that now that my teaching career, is sort of waning. I might put it all down in a book, but we'll see. We'll see. Just writing a book seems very daunting.
1 page a week.
That's or 1 page a day. Why not? 5 pages a week. I think I could probably handle that. It
was at the beginning of my commercial career, and I know I needed to get help. And you were recommended, and I actually left your course thinking, yes, I could do this. It wasn't something that you drilled in me. It was somehow you imparted the information and the lessons, and it was just sort of instilled, which is different than what I got with other people. There's a really major difference where somebody is, banging away at you to do this and do that and blah, 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 blah. And there was a peaceful way that you did things, very defined, concise, but sort of like a brother, father kind of figure that you looked up to and just wanted to absorb everything. And then to be able to get the hits that I got afterwards, which were like, what the hell? Oh my God. I was like, what? You know, I was looking at these checks that were coming in. I'm like, really? Because in my mind at that point, it's like, even though I had Jen who passed away, but she was behind me to do this.
God bless.
And some other friends said, yes, you could do it. In my mind, I had all these things, you know, age, the color, the you know, my accent, the best, blah, blah, blah. All of that stuff, you know, it just didn't matter anymore. And that was the great thing I have about you.
Oh, thank you. That's very sweet. Gosh, I think that my job as a teacher is to empower people to succeed on their own terms and learn for themselves that this is something that they can do. Obviously, actors, more than maybe most people, really get in their own way. Actors are more sensitive, actors feel more, perhaps, and so that sensitivity, I think, can lead to doubt, what you described, not really believing in themselves. Something that you don't know, we've really never talked about this. My father was a psychoanalyst. He was a Freudian psychoanalyst, and what they do is they sit and they listen, and they let their patients, in a way, analyze themselves. They guide them and they lead, but the growing is really done by the patient. And I obviously never sat in on my dad's sessions, and he and I never really talked about his work. But I often think that I inherited, if you will, just that ability to listen and to guide. Maybe it's just part of his nature and it's part of my nature, but I think you have to give people practical tools. Obviously, there's a technique to commercial performance, as there is a technique to singing and a technique to anything, really. There's a technique to woodworking. There's a technique to tennis playing. So you have to teach people the techniques and the tools, but at the same time, you have to give people the room to get out of their own way and to find their bearings. Because once the class is over, actors are on their own. And so I think it was important to me to, and it's still important to me. I'm teaching musical theater students now, young people, and it's really very important to me to instill belief in themselves. You can have all the talent in the world, but if you don't believe in yourself, then you're never going to get anywhere. And by the way, I just want to say that I knew day one that you would be fine, because your talent and instincts are really truly on point, and I was never worried about you.
Thank you. Thank you. So in terms of your teaching musical theater, are you still doing it like at NYU and Pace?
I was teaching commercials at NYU and Pace, but the musical theater teaching has been at AMDA, the American Musical and Dramatic Academy. And I've been doing that since 2015. I met Elaine Petrikoff, who runs that program, and one day she called and said, "Would you like to teach musical theater?" And it wasn't anything that I had really planned on doing. But again, you know, that straight line that that leads you from being a musical theater performer in my early 20s to teaching it now. Now, of course, I can see that straight line, but it's something that I, again, had not thought about doing, but it's, I think, what I was meant to do. I love it.
Were you, was this always a dream of yours as from a child? To be
a performer, to be an actor?
A performer, yeah. A teacher. Well, performer first.
Not a teacher. Teaching I fell into. Again, I think the universe pointed me in that direction, and people came to me to teach. When I was a casting director, casting commercials, a place called TVI. I don't know if you were around when they were around. TVI called me and said, "Would you like to teach commercials?" And again, it was sort of out of the blue, and I had never really thought about doing it. But once I started to teach, I realized, oh, I think I know what I'm talking about. And I was able to really put a syllabus together and a course together. And then after TVI, I went on my own, which is I had a private class, which is where we met. But I remember very clearly I was 5, and I was in first grade. I was a young. My birthday's in November, so my parents put me into first grade when I was 5. I remember all of us first graders walking into the auditorium for some parent day deal. Of course, we were all adorable and everyone applauded. And I thought, oh, I want more of this. And honestly, growing up, there was never any question. I'm very lucky in my parents that they never tried to dissuade me from following my passions. My mother received her voice degree from Eastman School of Music, so she sang as a youngster, and so she never pursued it, but I guess I got the talent, the gene from her. But my parents were very, very supportive, and honestly, since I was 6, there was never any question that that's what I was going to do. And luckily enough, I got opportunities to do it.
Yeah. When it's all over, what are the top, let's say, 3 memories that are at the front of your mind?
Certainly the moment that I had just turned 20, and that final audition for Merrily, and finding out that I had booked that job. It was quite a wonderful moment. And there's a great documentary called The Best Worst Thing That Ever Could Have Happened, which my friend Lonnie Price, who was also in the show, he directed it a number of years ago, and very briefly in it talking about the experience. But there are photographs and some videos of that day, which are included in the documentary, and you can see that we're all deliriously happy. So that I think is probably the top moment. I have great memories of Fiddler, of being on that stage and knowing that I was good, knowing that I was holding my own with some very, very seasoned people who've been in the business for a long, long time.
One more.
And, I think it's not really a moment, but just my reaching people and my connecting with people, with students is, again, it's not one memory, but it's just, I'm very proud of having been able to do that and still doing it. And I'm very proud when people tell me how much they got out of, like you.
Yes, you need to hear it.
It's very, very nice, obviously.
So what has been the biggest challenge for you in this new teaching arena? Because it's no longer, a lot of it is online. It's very different, right?
Well, COVID was, obviously very, very difficult, particularly for teaching musical theater, because of the time lag. An accompanist can't be in one location playing the piano and the singer in another location. There's a 3 or 4 second lag in sound. It was very difficult to recalibrate how we taught musical theater. And everything took 4 times longer than it had before. You and I have been through a lot, certainly 9/11, and when I realized that this was the first real crisis, and a global crisis, that any of my students had experienced me, because on top of everything else, on top of all of the anxiety about being in school and pursuing your dreams and trying to find out who you are as a person, they were having to deal with the anxiety, the additional anxiety of really watching the world fall apart. And then, of course, that COVID happened simultaneously to all of the social upheaval that we've witnessed over the past few years. A lot of my students left difficult home life situations to move to New York to pursue performing and to sort of get out of their terrible homes. And they had to go back to these terrible homes because the dorms shut down and there was no place for them to live in New York. I had a student who thankfully came back to school this semester and started all over again, and I was lucky enough to start over again with him. But at the time of the shutdown, he went back home. There was no place for him to live. He had given up his living situation, and I think he lived in his car for a couple of months. And I can't imagine how it is parents with younger children who have just not socialized for the past 2-3 years. If you have a toddler, at a time when kids need to socialize and learn social skills, and suddenly they're at home. I consider myself very, very lucky that I didn't have a lot to have to deal with. But I can imagine it's just been a terrible, terrible time for people, and I blessedly did not lose a lot of people to
You're very lucky, yes.
Yeah.
Any new habit or interest you picked up during these past couple of years, though?
Gosh, I love where I live. I have a very, very nice home life. Thank you very much. And in a way, it was a blessing to reconnect with all of that. And my niece had come to New York to live with us in January of 2020. And we were going to give her, as we had done with her brother, we were going to give her 3 months to sort of get her sea legs, and then of course COVID hit, and she ended up being with us for twice that long, which was really kind of wonderful. We watched a lot of Top Chef, and we bonded, and interestingly enough, I was the kind of person who every spare minute I was at the theater, I was doing this, I was doing that, and I just never gave myself time to relax, really, and just do nothing. And I learned how to do that in the past few years. So maybe that's a habit, but I don't think it's one I'm going to break anytime soon. I have to find a good balance, but I find now I don't want to leave my house. I saw some theater this afternoon, which was wonderful. I saw James McAvoy in Cyrano at Brooklyn Academy. But this morning, I didn't want to leave the house. So I had to get back to doing a little bit more than I'm doing now. But it was really just wonderful to rediscover silence.
Rediscover silence. Yes. That's important.
Because I think, I was born in New York City, so all my life it's been I've been here for many, many years. I've always been used to the pace, and I was going by myself to Broadway shows when I was 11 years old. I've just always been part of the community and just a part of New York City, really experiencing all that New York had to offer. And so I was running around doing everything, and we really obviously were forced to step back
And you look well.
Oh,
you look really well. I'm telling you, in the 2 years, it has affected people differently.
I see many of my students young people who suffer with social anxiety and depression, and I don't remember that really being as prevalent in my growing up. Perhaps it was, and it was just not something that anyone talked about. But I thankfully, I'm getting up there. So I've had some medical issues to deal with, diabetes recently, but none of the anxiety and stuff.
It was very important to have you on. You're part of my history. You impacted me. You impacted my career. You impacted my being, in the sense that I felt confident that I could crack this thing that people said that I could do. I had to believe it, right? And I gained that from being with you. And even your kindness. I remember spending some time talking to you about a certain part of my life, and your kindness in terms of spending that time. You're a busy man at that time. Very busy man. So it was very, very important for me to let you know the truth as one of the persons who's really impacted me. So I appreciate it. And just before you say anything, hang on, I'm going to tell my audience. Audience, this is DavidCady. Please care to share. Remember, when you're on your beach, stay on the sunny side of the street safely, be health conscious and kind to one another as David is. Don't forget to give thanks for the little and big things, more the little things.
Yes.
There you go, David.
The day-to-day things, absolutely.
Yes.
Well, it's been, as I said, it's been an honor. You honestly, when I got your email to appear, I wish you could have seen my smile when I saw that in my email inbox, because really and truly, you are good people, and I think it's important to hold on to people in this life. Thank you.
I felt it in your response. I was like,
I want you to know that my life has been impacted by my students and by the people that I've had the privilege to know and help. Teachers are grateful as well to their students. So thank you.
Thank you for doing what you do for the young folks out there, because you're not only teaching them about their craft, but I know you, the person that you are, you're teaching them more, you're giving them more than that. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
Thank you for this time. Be well, and we must keep in touch.
Yes, please. Oh my goodness, I would hate for this to be
a one-off.
No, not at all. Not at all.
Good.
All right.
Love you, David, very much. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.